So Boosie, 9 people, went to trial for 5. Used a 16-year-old to 5 people, and this kid didn't make over $50,000.
Boosie's so-called young enforcer, the same kid who once did all that heavy work for him, the same teen who got caught up in serious street business before he was even old enough to drive, is now reportedly trying to talk his way out of prison. Yeah, that's right. After years of staying silent while serving life behind bars, and while Boosie walked out free, Marlo Mike is finally ready to open up just for a shot at freedom. And trust me, this move is about to flip the whole story upside down. Everything people thought they knew about the Boosie situation might not be what it seemed at all. Let's run it back for a second, because this story gets darker the deeper we go. To really understand what's going on, you gotta know who Marlo Mike actually was. This wasn't some grown man or seasoned street figure with years of reputation. Nah, this was a kid, just 15, from Baton Rouge, who got caught in real street chaos way too early. His real name? Michael Ng. But on the streets, everybody called him Marlo Mike. Before Boosie ever crossed his path, he was just another teenager trying to make it through the struggle. Baton Rouge back in the mid-2000s was like a boiling pot ready to explode. Different groups were clashing, the hustle was wild, and rappers like Boosie and Webby were putting the city on the map with their music. Things were moving fast, and one wrong connection could change your whole life. And for Marlo Mike, that's exactly what happened. But with that fame came enemies, lots of them.
So Boosie, 9 people, went to trial for 5. Used a 16-year-old to 5 people, and this kid didn't make over $50,000. He paid $2,000 per hit. And people saying God on his side. You're a damn lie when he got a 15-year-old doing life in prison. And by the way, I helped work on that law to try to get this kid out. It's called JLY, juvenile life without parole. I went to Washington, D.C. over 4 or 5 times. We got it abolished, but you know what? They didn't make it retroactive for the boy Boosie used. So that's why this is personal to me, nigga.
When you're blowing up in the rap game while still tied to the streets, people start plotting on you. They want your spotlight, your respect, your spot at the top. And Boosie knew it. He needed protection, not just from bodyguards and suits, but from people who really lived that lifestyle and could move in silence when things got risky. Now back then, before Boosie Badass became a household name, he was just Lil Boosie, an up-and-coming rapper from Baton Rouge grinding his way to the top around 2005 and 2006. He was making big moves with Trill Entertainment, dropping hits like Zoom and Wipe Me Down that was shaking every club and every block. But behind all that music and success, there were whispers of a darker hustle going on in the background. There were talks of street dealings, power struggles, and money changing hands in ways that went far beyond the music industry. And when you're that deep in the mix, you start needing people around who will handle situations quietly, no questions asked. That's where Marlo Mike stepped into the picture. But here's what most people get twisted. Marlo Mike wasn't some cold-hearted criminal when Boosie found him. He was just a young kid, still trying to figure out life, probably bumping Boosie's tracks on repeat. To him, Boosie wasn't just a rapper, he was the dream, the blueprint of making it out and earning respect. So when someone like that shows you love, brings you close, and treats you like family, you'll do whatever it takes to prove you belong. But here's where it gets absolutely wild. We're not talking about one situation, not even 2 or 3. Reports connected 15-year-old Marlo Mike to 9 serious crimes. 9. Just let that sink in for a second. This was a kid who wasn't even old enough to vote, couldn't legally buy a pack of gum without ID, couldn't rent a car, couldn't do anything adults do. But somehow, he was out here moving like a pro in a world way too dark for someone his age. And here's the part that blows people's minds. Word on the street was that Boosie was allegedly giving him only about $2,000 each time. $2,000, that's it. Think about that for a second. You know how much rappers drop on one night out, one piece of jewelry, or one designer outfit just for social media. But this young kid was risking everything for $2,000. Do the math. 9 times 2,000, that's only 18 grand total. That's not even enough to cover a real lawyer if things ever went south. When you really look at it, that's not loyalty, that's exploitation of a kid who didn't even understand what kind of danger he was in. Now imagine being 15 in the middle of Baton Rouge with a few $1,000s being flashed in front of you. To a young kid from the struggle, that feels like a fortune. That's sneakers, clothes, maybe helping his mom with bills, and in his eyes, he was finally somebody important. But what nobody told him was that money tied to violence always comes with a price you can't pay back. The streets were watching, no doubt about it. Everybody in Baton Rouge had an idea of what was going on, but nobody dared to say a word. You know how it is. Silence is part of the street code, and talking too much can bring the wrong kind of attention. But behind closed doors, whispers were spreading fast. People knew Boosie had a young enforcer by his side, and that this kid was handling serious business long before he was even old enough to drive. We're talking about situations that completely shifted the energy in the city. Rival crews, people who had crossed Boosie, or anyone who had caused drama. It was said that Marlo Mike was the one handling things quietly, and he was doing all this before he even made it halfway through high school. One of the biggest cases that made headlines was the one involving a man named Terry Boyd. He lost his life in October 2009, and prosecutors claimed that Marlo Mike was the one responsible. They also alleged that Boosie had ordered it, but that was just one piece of a much bigger story. There were more incidents, so many that when the full list came out, even people who'd seen a lot in the streets were stunned. How could someone so young get caught up in so many violent situations? How did nobody step in to stop it before it spiraled this far? That's the question that still haunts people. But here's what doesn't get talked about enough. The mental toll this took on Marlo Mike himself. Yeah, he was out there doing what he thought he had to do, earning respect and getting paid. But at the end of the day, he was still just a kid with feelings, guilt, and a mind that couldn't handle all that chaos forever. Imagine trying to carry that kind of weight before you're even grown. It messes with your soul. That kind of pressure starts to crush you from the inside. Marlo Mike couldn't even sleep at night. No exaggeration. And this isn't for drama. This is real life. While Boosie was out in the studio recording hits, performing on stage, and living the fast-paced rapper lifestyle, this young kid was stuck in his cell or laying in bed haunted by memories of everything that had gone down. That's 9 families broken, 9 mothers crying, 9 lives gone, and all for what? A few $1,000s and some so-called street respect? The guilt started eating him alive. Deep down, he wasn't built for that kind of life, not long term. Honestly, very few people are, but especially not a 15-year-old who still had his whole future ahead of him.
When you're an adult and choose that kind of path, you've at least got a brain that's finished developing. You can try to rationalize things, bury the guilt, and tell yourself it's part of survival. But when you're still a kid, your mind isn't even fully grown yet. You don't have the emotional tools to handle trauma like that. Every night became a battle for him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw faces he couldn't forget, heard sounds that wouldn't stop replaying in his head. It was like being trapped in a nightmare that never ended. And the worst part? Nobody was there to help him process any of it. There wasn't anyone asking, "You good? You need to talk to somebody?" No support, no guidance, nothing. Just pressure and orders. It was all, "Here's another job, here's the cash, keep moving." Marlo Mike had turned into a tool for someone else's gain, used, directed, and discarded when it was convenient. And the saddest part of all, he probably didn't even realize he was being used. He thought he was proving loyalty, when really, he was just losing himself piece by piece. He really thought he was being loyal. In his mind, he was earning his spot in the crew, proving himself to the people he looked up to. But then, out of nowhere, he did something nobody saw coming. He turned himself in. Yeah, that's right. Marlo Mike walked into a police station and confessed on his own. Not because someone exposed him, not because he got caught slipping, and not even because they had solid evidence against him. He confessed because the guilt had gotten too heavy to carry. He couldn't live with what he'd done anymore. He needed to let it out, even if it meant spending the rest of his life behind bars. That's how deep his guilt ran. When news of that confession broke, the streets went wild. Some people immediately labeled him a snitch, saying he broke the code and that real ones don't ever talk, no matter what. But others saw it differently. They said, "Hold up, this wasn't a grown man making grown decisions. This was a kid who got manipulated and used." And that's a truth people don't like to talk about. Let's be real. Boosie was the adult in that situation. He was the one with fame, money, connections, and power. Marlo Mike was just a teenager trying to prove himself, chasing respect and trying to impress someone he admired. That's a huge difference in power. Now imagine this. You're 15, barely figuring out life, and a successful rapper, someone you see as a legend, tells you to handle something serious, what would you do? You don't have the wisdom yet to say no. You don't have the experience to see the bigger picture. All you see is someone who made it out, offering you a way to be part of something big. All he saw was the moment, the chance to matter, to finally be somebody important. But here's the part that leaves you speechless. Boosie went to trial for 5 of those serious charges, and he beat the case. He walked out a free man and went straight back to making music like nothing ever happened. Meanwhile, Marlo Mike, a teenager, just a kid, got sentenced to life with no chance of parole. The system didn't hold back on him at all. They threw everything at that boy. No second chances, no rehabilitation, no shot at redemption. Just a cold cell and a lifetime of regret to sit with. That trial was pure chaos from start to finish. Prosecutors painted a picture of Boosie as the mastermind of an organized operation, saying he allegedly gave orders and that Marlo Mike carried them out. They had recordings, witness statements, and other evidence lined up, but Boosie's legal team came ready. They built enough doubt to shake the whole case, and because of that, the jury couldn't convict him beyond a reasonable doubt, so he walked free. But Marlo Mike, he didn't have that kind of defense. He had already confessed to everything. He had already told them what went down, and once those words were on record, there was no taking them back. Even though he was only 15, even though experts could clearly see he was influenced and manipulated by older figures, the court showed zero compassion. They handed him life without parole and sent him straight to Angola, the Louisiana State Penitentiary, one of the roughest, most dangerous prisons in the entire country. That place has a reputation for breaking grown men. Now imagine sending a teenager there. They call it the farm for a reason. It's built on what used to be an old plantation. And to this day, inmates still work those same fields like it's the 1800s. It's one of the toughest, most dangerous prisons in the country, a place where Louisiana sends people they never plan on releasing. And that's exactly where they sent Marlo Mike. By the time he was sentenced, he had just turned 16, a kid, barely old enough to drive, sent to spend the rest of his life behind those walls. Imagine that. A teenager locked away in one of America's harshest prisons while the man he once followed walks free. Boosie can sleep peacefully at night, go live on Instagram, throw pool parties, drop albums, do interviews, and make millions, acting like his hands are spotless. But Marlo Mike, that young man has to live with heavy memories every single day for the rest of his life. That's the difference between the one giving orders and the one being used like a pawn. It's cold, but it's real. But the story doesn't end there. Because now Charleston White has stepped into the picture. And if you know Charleston, you already know he don't hold back when it comes to calling people out. He's been on a full mission to get Marlo Mike's sentence reduced and to expose what he calls a system built to destroy young lives before they even begin. Charleston's been fighting for a law called JLUOP, Juvenile Life Without Parole Reform. It's a push to end life sentences for kids, arguing that young people, even those who've made terrible choices, shouldn't be condemned to die in prison when their brains and judgment aren't even fully developed yet. Science proves that the part of the brain that controls judgment and impulse doesn't fully develop until around 25 years old. So how can you give a 15-year-old the same sentence you'd hand to a 40-year-old? It just doesn't add up. That's exactly what Charleston White's been fighting for. He's been to Washington, D.C. multiple times, 4, maybe 5 trips, pushing hard to get new laws passed to protect kids like Marlo Mike. He's been teaming up with justice reform groups, meeting with lawmakers, and telling stories like Marlo Mike's to show how broken the system really is. And his efforts haven't been unnoticed. Some states have already abolished juvenile life without parole, and even the Supreme Court ruled that mandatory life sentences for minors are unconstitutional. But here's the part that stings. It wasn't made retroactive. That means kids like Marlo Mike, who were already sentenced before the change, are still stuck. The new generation might get a second chance, but the ones who've been in for years, they're still sitting in those same cells hoping someone notices their pain. That's why Charleston stays fired up about this. He feels like Boosie walked away untouched, while the young man he followed is paying the ultimate price.
And Charleston isn't staying quiet about it either. He's been calling Boosie out publicly, saying Boosie misled more young people than almost anybody out here. In his eyes, Boosie was the grown man with influence, and that kind of power comes with responsibility. Charleston's been saying that if anyone deserves to face consequences, it's the one who gave the orders, not the kid who followed them. He even went as far as saying he wants to step into a boxing ring with Boosie just to make him feel the pain he caused. Whether or not that ever happens, one thing's clear: Charleston isn't backing down. He's using his voice to make sure stories like Marlo Mike's don't get buried, and to remind the world what happens when power and influence go unchecked. Charleston said it straight. Boosie can sleep easy at night because he didn't pull the trigger, but that young kid can't close his eyes without seeing everything he did. At just 15 years old, Marlo Mike was carrying the weight of 9 lost lives on his conscience. That's why he went to the police. He couldn't take it anymore. While Boosie's out here throwing pool parties, living large and dropping albums, that same kid who once looked up to him is locked away, haunted by what happened. Charleston wasn't lying when he said that young man couldn't sleep at night because his heart was heavy with guilt. Imagine that, a teenager trying to live with something no child should ever experience. Charleston's calling out the double standard loud and clear. How can someone live their best life while the kid who carried out their dirty work is sitting in a cell, broken inside? How can you rap about loyalty and street codes when you abandon the very person who put everything on the line for you? That's what doesn't sit right with a lot of people. Now, of course, some folks will say, well, Marlo Mike made his choices. He could have said no. And yes, technically, that's true. He made decisions that changed lives forever. But let's not pretend that a 15-year-old has the same mindset as a grown man. Let's not act like Boosie didn't have major influence over him. When you're young and someone with fame, money, and respect tells you to do something, and that person represents everything you dream of becoming, you listen, especially if you don't have strong guidance at home or a father figure teaching you right from wrong. No guidance, no real options. This story shows exactly how the streets really work. It's not always the ones pulling the trigger who get away. It's usually the people who keep their hands clean, the ones with money, power, and connections who can pay for top lawyers and walk free while everyone else takes the fall. Meanwhile, the young ones who do the dirty work end up losing everything, either gone too soon or spending life behind bars. And this isn't just about Boosie and Marlo Mike. It's a cycle we keep seeing over and over in hip-hop and street culture. Older guys with status using younger ones to do their bidding. Rappers with influence shaping how kids think, making it seem like violence equals respect. It's a system built on exploitation, and it's destroying the very communities that created the culture in the first place. Marlo Mike's story is just one out of thousands. Think about how many teens right now are looking up to artists who glorify street life in their music, thinking that's the only way to earn respect or survive. There are 14, 15, and 16-year-olds ready to throw away their futures for people who wouldn't even visit them if they got locked up. The sad truth? The culture is eating itself alive while outsiders and big corporations profit from it. The music industry loves the image, the chaos, and the controversy because it sells records. They love the authentic street stories because it brings attention and money, but they don't love the real-life pain behind it. They don't care about the kids getting lost in the system or the families left behind. They'll market the drama, push the music, and celebrate the realness. But when it's time to take responsibility for the influence they've created, silence. That's the game nobody wants to admit is being played and is costing young lives every single day. And now here we are, years later, and the story still isn't over. Marlo Mike's name might not be trending anymore, but his situation still represents everything wrong with how young lives get thrown away in the system. This isn't just a case, it's a reflection of what happens when power, influence, and fame collide with desperation and youth. Where it is, Charleston White still hasn't stopped fighting for him. He's been on podcasts, interviews, and social media calling out the justice system and demanding that Marlo Mike's case get another look. He says if we really believe in second chances, then that should include kids like Marlo, kids who were manipulated, used, and tossed aside before they even had a chance to grow up. There's even been talk about documentaries and campaigns being planned to highlight how unfair juvenile sentencing can be. And honestly, it's about time, because for every Marlo Mike, there are hundreds more sitting in cells across the country, forgotten by the same world that once hyped them up for being real. That's the tragedy nobody likes to face. Boosie, on the other hand, is still out here living life, touring, recording, doing interviews, acting like his chapter in this story is closed. But the internet never forgets. Every time his name comes up, so does the shadow of what happened all those years ago. Some say he's moved on. Others say he's just pretending the past doesn't exist. Either way, it's a wound that never fully healed in Baton Rouge. And that's what makes this story so heavy. It's not just about guilt or punishment. It's about accountability. It's about how fame can protect one person while destroying another. It's about a system that knows how to punish, but not how to fix. Marlo Mike still behind bars, still fighting for his life, still hoping that someone out there will hear his story and care enough to help. Whether Charleston succeeds or not, one thing's for sure. This story exposed the dark side of the culture that so many glorify. It's not all chains, cars, and fame. It's broken lives, lost kids, and choices that can't be undone. To the industry, it's all just entertainment, but for the people living it, it's real life with real consequences. Marlo Mike's story should serve as a warning for every young man out there trying to prove himself. Don't let anyone, no matter how famous, rich, or respected they are, turn you into their tool or their protector, because when everything falls apart, you're the one who has to live with those choices. You're the one who can't sleep at night. You're the one sitting in a cell while they're out living their best life, smiling for the cameras like nothing ever happened.
That's the painful truth people don't talk about enough. And if you're hearing this, Charleston White and plenty of others believe you owe that young man something. Maybe it's helping fight for his release. Maybe it's finally speaking the truth about what really went down. Or maybe it's using your voice and platform to push for laws that protect kids from ending up in the same situation as Marlo Mike. Because right now, it doesn't look good. It looks like you used a teenager, tossed him aside, and moved on like he never existed. Now maybe there's more to the story. Maybe there are details the public doesn't know, but perception is powerful. And right now, the public sees a man who made it out clean while a kid is still paying the price. The least that could be done is showing some heart, some awareness, some accountability. Use your influence to talk about how the system targets our youth. Speak on how our culture keeps glorifying violence like it's something to brag about, when in reality, it's destroying entire generations. The music, the image, the hype, it all sells, but the ones living it for real are the ones who lose everything. Show growth, show responsibility, and show people there's a different path. Because if you truly live the message you rap about, then you should care about the ones who went down believing in you. We gotta do better, all of us. We gotta protect our youth instead of letting the world chew them up and spit them out. We can't keep allowing rappers, street figures, or anyone with influence to use young boys as pawns in their personal games. It's time we start having real, honest conversations about the kind of music we listen to and the messages we're pushing to the next generation. Because whether we admit it or not, that energy shapes how these kids see life. We need accountability, not just for the ones who pull the trigger, but for the adults who guide them down that path. We can't keep acting like the grown-ups who manipulate these kids are innocent while the kids take all the blame. And it's not just about the streets, it's about the justice system too. A system that still throws away children without giving them a chance to grow, learn, or change. Right now, Marlo Mike is sitting in Angola, probably wishing every day that he could rewind time and make a different choice. You can bet those moments play in his mind over and over. The same faces, the same regrets, the same what-ifs. He probably wishes someone had stepped in, told him no, and shown him a different path before it was too late. But the past can't be changed. All he can do now is hold on to hope. Hope that somebody with real power, influence, or compassion might step up and fight for him. And right now, that person is Charleston White, the only one really standing up, speaking out, and trying to bring justice for a kid who never got a chance to grow into the man he could have been. The real question now is, will it be enough? Will Marlo Mike ever get a shot at freedom, or will he spend the rest of his life behind bars for mistakes he made when his mind wasn't even fully developed? That decision's in the hands of the courts, the lawyers, the activists, and maybe, just maybe, Boosie himself if he still has any sense of responsibility left. So what do you think?
Should Marlo Mike be given another chance at life? Should Boosie be held accountable in any way for his role in this story? And most importantly, should we as a culture start doing more to protect our youth from being used, influenced, and thrown away before they even get a chance to live? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you made it this far, hit that like button and subscribe, because here we don't shy away from the hard conversations. We dig into the stories the culture tries to ignore, the ones that make people uncomfortable, because that's how real change starts. We're not just talking gossip, we're talking about accountability, justice, and the future of our youth. Every time we shine light on stories like this, we push the culture forward just a little more. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and protect the next generation. And remember this, real strength isn't measured by how much damage you can cause. It's measured by how many lives you can lift up, how many people you can help steer away from the same mistakes. That's what being real is all about. Peace.